everybody, Jason here from Auto City Imports, and today we're going to be doing an Eibach Sportline spring install on a 2008 Plus Lancer. Now, the install should be the same whether it's an ES, GT, GTS, Sportback, as we have here, a Rally Art. It all should really relatively be the same. These Eibach Sportlines will give you a 1.7 drop in the front and a 1.2 inch drop in the rear. And the first thing that you guys are going to want to do is actually break the lug nuts in the front. We're going to start with the front. Go ahead and jack up the car and get it on some jack stands for safety. We've already done that, so let's get started. Okay, so after you get the wheel off the car, this is what you have. And there are only a few bolts that you need to take off here. First you want to loosen up these guys here. There's two of them. There's one here and one right below it. These are 19 mil. And what you're going to want to use is a 19 mil closed end wrench and a 19 mil socket, and put the closed end wrench on this side unless you have a deep well for the socket, and then the socket on this side. Go ahead and line them up. It may be helpful to have a second person, one person to hold this one while the other person crank this one. You may need to get a breaker bar involved here to loosen them up. Both of these are already loosened for us. You also have a 12 mil nut here that you want to take off. And once you take that 12 mil nut off, this whole brake line assembly and speed sensor assembly will come off. Just have to loosen it up here, and this will slide off. And then there's a little plastic clip that goes around here, and it's just pressurized in. So all you gotta do is kind of lift it off on both sides, and then you can get this out of your way here so you can actually get the strut off. So that's all clear now. And then the last thing you have is your sway bar link. With this, you'll need a 5mm Allen, which we have here on a socket. You can either use an Allen wrench or a socket. It's sometimes easier to use the Allen wrench. And the first thing you want to do, it's a 14mm nut as well. So you'll put the 14 mil on first, and then you'll use the Allen key to put in the middle here, and you'll have someone hold this steady while you loosen up the 14 mil. Now, sometimes it'll work and sometimes it won't. You can see it's really greasy. We put a bunch of PB Blaster on it to loosen it up. Unfortunately, we were not able to get this off. We stripped the inside, so we're gonna have to pick up some new sway bar end links for this. Because we're doing all this anyway, it may be a good idea to replace those while you're at it. You might as well. They're only maybe $15 to $25 at your local auto parts store. So we're gonna go ahead and pick some of those up, but if so, you can try it first to see if you can get those off. If you do end up stripping the inside, you're pretty much gonna have to ruin the sway bar end link to get it off, which is no big deal. Like I said, it's just a cheap part. So we're gonna go ahead and angle grind that off. But for down here, once you get the 12 mil off here, the 19s off here and here, and this off here, the bottom portion of the uninstallation for the stock strut is complete. The next option will be in the engine bay. Alright, so after we take out everything below in the wheel well, the next step is to take these three 14mm bolts off here. You'll need a 14mm deep well, as well as a 14mm wrench. The front two here, you'll be able to get to with 14mm deep well. This one, because this plastic cover is in the way, we just used a closed end wrench to get to it and bring it off. So we'll go ahead and loosen this one up, and then we'll be able to drop the stock strut out. So now that we got the front strut off, you can see we have the new one sitting right next to it. The new one doesn't come with the spring or the shock cover or the bump stop or the top hat, so we're going to have to transfer this over to the new one. The first thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to compress this spring so you can remove the top hat safely. In order to do that, you'll need to pick up a set of spring compressors. They're manual spring compressors. You can pick these up at a local auto parts store. You can rent them from them. That way you can just run them for some odd sum of money, and then you get your money returned when you return the actual spring compressor. The way that these work is you have a like a threaded side on this side and then a fully adjustable side on this side. And then there's 2 pins, and the 2 pins will lock the spring into place. So what you're going to want to do is set it up so they line up on the springs. Go ahead and lock the pins down, and you're going to want to tighten this up as tight as you can get it. Obviously it's going to be easier by hand at first, and then it'll get harder and harder, and then we'll crank it down. This is a 3/4 inch on this side. Some of them may be different. Mine, I just know is 3/4 inch, so now it's getting pretty hard to do by hand. So I have my 3/4 inch here. And you'll just keep tightening this down so all the compression of the spring is in between here rather than on the top hat, so you can safely remove this. Okay, so you can see that we've taken apart the stock strut, and here is the old one here. In order to do that, what you're going to have to do is, if we kind of piece this back together real quick, you put this spring back on here. You got this bump stop shock cover here, top hat with the cover on here, and then the actual top here. And what I did is I put one of the 14mm nuts back on it, and I put this on here to help me keep the strut from spinning, the actual shock from spinning inside, while I used a 17mm deep well on the actual top nut to loosen it up. You'll also need to grab a crescent wrench here and go ahead and lock it down, and that way you can hold this from spinning while you're actually loosening it up. And once it pops off, these will obviously come off like so. Spring will come off. This will be a little bit tighter on there, and you can discard this. Now you can see when I push this shock in, it doesn't come back out, and that's when you know you got a bad strut. This is pretty old, it needs to be replaced. So we've taken apart the front strut, and here is the old one here. As you can see, it's pushed in and it's not coming back out, which is a sign that this strut is blown. Now we're going to replace it with the new KYB, and we're also going to do a spring install. Now this is, again, the Eibach Sport line, and the first thing that you're going to want to do is take the bottom cover off your stock spring, because you're going to want to put this on the bottom of your Eibach spring here. Now it does have these, so you can either add this to it or not. It's up to you. It's pretty easy to slide on, just like so. And then this will go on and line up just like this. Perfect. Now, you won't need, this is your stock bump stop here with your like shock boot. You're not going to need this. When you buy the Eibach Pro kit or the Sportline kit, it'll come with a new shock boot and a new bump stop. So you don't have to trim your bump stops, you don't have to do anything, you basically just put these on and you're good to go. The new KYB will come with a new nut, so you're ready to go with that. You'll just need the top hat and obviously the corresponding parts with it, with the rubber. So all we gotta do is go ahead and put all of this back on, and we will be set to go. So I'm just gonna slide this on here. Slide the bump stop on. And then we're going to put the, make sure the cover goes over the bump stop, and then put this on the end, and put this on top, and then tighten it back down to factory specs. So here's the rear strut assembly. The rear is a lot easier than the front. The first thing that we're going to want to do is take off the one bolt down here. Now I've already taken this nut off, but it would originally be right here. They're both 17mm, so you'll just need a 17mm socket with a wrench, well, with a ratchet, and then a closed end wrench, and this will come off pretty easily. Once you get the nut off, I used a hammer, and I just hammered it through as far as it is now, and then you'll just get like a punch or something to get it all the rest of the way through and punch it out the other side, and then we'll start from the top. Okay, so this is the trunk of the Sportback. Obviously, if you have a normal Lancer, it may look a little different, so it's going to be kind of hard for me to show you how to actually access your strut tower mounts in the rear. But for the Sportback, you just remove the deck. There are some push pins. There are 4 Phillip head screws, and then one 10mm nut. You'll have a flap on each side that you can lift up, and once you lift it up, you can see that there are the strut tower mount is right here, and there are 2 14mm nuts that go on these studs here. There's one here, then there's one on the exact opposite side, which you can't see, but it's just right behind here. Again, it's a 14mm nut. Go ahead and loosen those up, take those off as we did already, and now we're ready to remove the stock strut shock mount from the vehicle. Okay, so this is the rear spring strut assembly. This is the stock spring. You can see that we still have the spring compressor on it. We haven't taken it off yet, so we compress the spring first, and then for this top, it's a lot easier than the front. You have a 17mm bolt on top, and then on top of the strut mount itself, there is a flat area, which you can see maybe here, that we just used a pair of vice grips to grab, and then a 17mm ratcheting wrench here, and where we were able to pop that and get it to come off. Now when it comes off, obviously you have the top hat, so you have the nut, the washer, the top hat, a couple rubber bushings that are in it, and then you have another big washer here right on top of the bump stop and the shock cover. Now this one is probably still in decent shape, but we have new ones anyway, so we're going to go ahead and put the rear back together, and you're going to retain all of this stock stuff for this spring here. Now if we were doing just a shock replacement, we would use this spring again, just put it back on, then put the cover with the bump stop, the washer, and then all this stuff on, and then go ahead and tighten it back down. But we are actually going to put an Eibach lowering spring on. This will lower you 1.4 inches in the rear, and it's going to be the same steps as the stock one. You're going to line it up just like you would the stock one. Go ahead and put your shock cover on. The Eibach doesn't require any modification to the rear, so you're not going to cut them or anything. You're just going to slide it on and get it on there as tight as you can. Then you're going to want to put the washer on, and then the top hat. Then the other washer and the nut. Now obviously you're going to need to compress this spring again. That way it can be it's small enough to where this will fit on, and you can tighten this nut back down, and then you'll just reverse the steps to put it back on the vehicle. Again, whether you're using the stock spring for just a normal shock replacement, or you're upgrading to a lowering spring, the steps are the same for putting this back together, and then you just reverse the steps. It's just the 117 or the 17mm bolt down here with the nut, and then up here you got 2 14mm that you replace in the front, put your trunk back together, and you guys are all good to go.